So a recent article in Popular Mechanics is making the rounds on social media, basically stating that that consciousness is a quantum phenomenon and that your consciousness can be entangled with and interact with the entire universe. And scientists believe, I always love that, scientists believe, really which scientists and what is it actually that they believe? So this basic claim is pretty much nonsense. At the very least, it has not been established. This is not what scientists think about consciousness. This is a fringe minority opinion. And they have not, it's not even really a theory. It's barely a hypothesis. It's really just a wild ass speculation that has not been established in any way, really. Now, what's the new evidence that is kicking this off and that inspired that article in Popular Mechanics was a study, but it was a simulation, right? It wasn't even really a study. They simulated microtubules in neurons, and the question was, could they, based upon the simulation, would there be quantum effects in terms of how energy gets transported down these microtubules? And they found that, yes, there could be quantum effects. So what this is talking about is quantum entanglement. And this has been a source of misunderstanding, forever since quantum mechanics existed. And the New Age, woo, ESP kind of end of the spectrum loves this idea because, see, our consciousness is a quantum thing that could be entangled. And that explains all ESP and all psi phenomenon and all of that. Or Deepak Chopra, it's again, yes, see, this is sort of an Eastern idea that your consciousness is actually one with the universe. And now they're trying to say that, see, science is showing that this is true through quantum mechanics, but none of that is true. So first of all, the article starts, which I find gratuitously, most articles about consciousness start by completely overplaying our ignorance about what the causes of consciousness are, right? They try to make it sound like scientists have no idea what consciousness is, or even where it is, or what the substrate of consciousness is. And this is not true. We know quite a bit about consciousness. We have not completely reverse engineered the neuroanatomical correlates of your stream of consciousness. That doesn't mean we know nothing about it. We know that it's a brain phenomenon. We know that it is a phenomenon that results from the networks and the circuitry and the neuronal activity in your brain in real time. We certainly know that if we alter the neuronal firing, it alters your experience of your consciousness, sometimes in very specific ways, depending on what part of the brain we're messing with. And if we turn off your neuronal firing, that turns off your consciousness. So just to name a few things, we have some really good big picture knowledge about consciousness. We know it's a brain phenomenon. We know it's a neuronal phenomenon. We know it's a circuitry phenomenon. But do we know exactly which circuits are contributing which aspects to our experience of consciousness? No, that's a very complicated question. We are still a long way from completely filling out that picture. But that doesn't mean that it could be something magical or something that we have no idea about, or maybe it's a completely different quantum effect that has nothing to do with our understanding of, at the level that we are right now in terms of neuroscience. It doesn't mean that at all. But the article starts out with that as the premise. Scientists have no idea. Maybe it's this weird quantum thing. No, not quite. Now, the reason why scientists are not impressed with this theory, the quantum theory of consciousness, is because quantum level effects don't, especially like entanglement, these occur in very isolated, very special situations, right? If we want to recreate it in a lab, for example, we need to have very cool temperatures. You need to cool the situation down to close to absolute zero. You have to limit the interaction with other physical stuff, right? Because the quantum state of matter is a very delicate state that collapses into more of a classical state whenever matter interacts with other matter. And so you have to maintain these special states in order to maintain these weird quantum interactions and quantum entanglement, etc. So the question is, well, can any of these quantum effects exist in biological organisms if it has to be so cold and it has to be so isolated? And the answer is a kind of yes and no. There are some quantum effects at the margins that occur in biological systems. It doesn't mean the entire system is a quantum phenomenon, and it certainly doesn't mean that entanglement is happening. Again, not all quantum phenomena are the same. And just because you said, oh, look, in photosynthesis, there's this energy transfer which is exploiting this quantum phenomenon, at a cell level. It's like, okay, but that doesn't tell you anything about quantum entanglement, right? Really doesn't tell you much about that at all. It doesn't mean that your consciousness, that the overall phenomenon of consciousness can be entangled with other things, can have this quantum interaction with the entire universe. It doesn't mean that at all, even if they established that there were quantum effects contributing to consciousness, which they haven't. This has not been established at all. So in my opinion, that was a terrible article in Popular Mechanics, that it completely was mystery mongering about neuroscience and consciousness. And then it takes this very narrow simulation type study, which saying, yeah, maybe this kind of interaction, this kind of quantum phenomenon is semi-plausible if you look at it in a certain way, trying to parlay that into scientists believe that this is what consciousness is about. It's utter nonsense. Even if these simulations, this whatever effect that they're talking about turns out to be true, which has not been established, that does not mean that consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon. And there are really good reasons in both physics and neuroscience to believe that it isn't a fundamentally quantum phenomenon, which means it cannot be entangled. And no, your consciousness is not connected to the entire universe. There is absolutely zero evidence that this is the case. This is fringe speculation, and that is how a good science journalist should portray it, put it into its proper context. That is not what the article did. And it is creating a lot of misunderstanding of the fundamental science on social media, which is a good sign that this is a science journalism fail. You have generated a misunderstanding and a lot of sensationalism, not actually good understanding of the underlying science.